Everyone wants to know who the best legends are in Apex, and so many people have different opinions on who actually is the best. Well, today I'm going to put every legend in a tier list to show everyone who exactly is bad, who is just average, and who's on top. I personally believe this will be the best tier list you'll see this season, but I also want to say that nowadays the meta is shifting a lot, so if I put a legend really low and you don't agree, remember there's a good chance they'll be meta very quickly. And don't forget that it matters a lot on how you play the legend as well, so if you're really good with your main, just continue using them, unless you're wanting a new challenge. Without further ado, let's begin. We will start with the D tier legends, where I have two people. The first legend here, in my opinion the worst legend in Apex, is going to be Fuse. Fuse has a very good tactical and can be used very well, but I'm sorry, his passive and ultimate are really bad. Carrying extra nades really isn't worth it nowadays, and his ultimate is easily escapable and it's not damaging enough. Even if you walk through the flames, it doesn't do a lot of damage, and I would say a knuckle cluster would do similar damage to his ultimate, which shouldn't be the case. Definitely in need of a buff very quickly. The second legend in D tier will be a major shock to a lot of people, but I also think it's fair, as a few people will agree, OCTANE goes in D tier. On the face of it, yes, he is very fun. Zooming around the map can definitely get the adrenaline going, but in reality he is outmatched by every other movement legend in the game. To start, his passive is good, but it's not quick enough when it matters, as when you're stimming into fights the regen just isn't quick enough. Stimming itself is just not usable now, as the health decrease is just way too much to deal with when enemies are nearby. Those two abilities definitely need a health rework for me. Then the ultimate. It's a good ability, but again, every other movement legend has better. Whether it be faster, longer, quieter, or sneakier, other legends have him on toast. Moving away from the D tier legends, we are now going to look at the C tier legends. Kicking off, we have VANTAGE. VANTAGE mains weren't happy with my last rating, but I'm sorry, your sniper just isn't useful when it comes to the hard lobbies. There's nearly no good player that'll be hit twice by your rifle, as they'll just get hit once and then locate cover instantly. Her passive is useful, but if I'm being honest, you can learn the same information from her passive by just looking at the enemy team with your game sense. Her tactical is actually good, and I'll give you that. It's good for quick escapes, finding angles, and joining up with your team from your sniper spot. I personally think it's your passive that lets you down the most. More recon info is needed for her to be worth the pick. Next is the legend that doesn't seem to be worth it despite buffs here and there. It's Ashe. Ashe has a fairly good movement ability in her portal, but being honest, it's just way too obvious what's going to happen after using it. It's very loud, and you have so much time to aim in at the other end of the portal and beam Ashe and her squad mates as they teleport. Her tactical can be very good, but it's very situational. It's best used in small entry points, but not every fight has these scenarios. You can use it on enemies in the open or behind cover, but it just doesn't do enough when the enemies have room to work with. Then her passive, which is easily one of her worst abilities. Being able to see deaths on the map is pointless, as the ones nearby you hear anyways, and the ones that are far away are useless as you can't get there in time to make a difference. Next is CAUSTIC, who was once a very good legend, but with the introduction of catalysts and different playstyles, CAUSTIC has fallen off. Being able to destroy his traps was a major fall off for him, as he can't secure spots safety like other legends can. His gas is deadly, but in reality the spread isn't big enough and is easily escapable. His passive coincides with his other abilities, so that's fine, but as we said, his tactical needs a rework as his traps are no longer a threat. His ultimate can be very good for pushing enemies that are grouped, but there are not many good players in these scenarios, and if they are caught in these scenarios, they're good enough to get out of them as well. I think they should make it so his traps aren't one tap anymore, which would greaten his status as a controller. Another C tier legend is LIFELINE. Another season for her and she is still not highly rated, and it's not just me saying that either. Her kit just doesn't have the support that the other support legends have. For me, a legend who is a medic should be able to revive the best, but in reality she doesn't. Her res can be good, don't get me wrong, but the down player is so endangered sometimes it's better off they are a knockdown shield for your cover. Her drone actually heals quite well, so I don't think the problems lie here. Always good after fights whilst looting up. Her ultimate is a weird one though, as her whole package is actually very useful, but it still seems so underwhelming at the same time. I think it's because her teammates' loot is accounted for. Maybe if it was just her loot it would be better. The last legend in C tier is RAMPART. Her passive is terrible, for me one of the worst in the game. The extra bullets and reload speed actually is a great help. The problem however is it's only good on LMGs, which is definitely the worst weapon class there is in the entire game. All the assault rifles do a better job than any LMG, making the passive useless. The walls have actually provided players with good cover, however the wall's health is a problem. If you see a Rampart place the wall, it doesn't take very many bullets to destroy them. Her ultimate really is extremely situational. It's great for breaking down doors and attacking campers, but for general fights it's better to use your normal guns, as you turn like a truck and can't react fast enough. On to the B tier legends. These legends are in the middle, good at what they do but can be improved. Beginning this list will be BALLISTIC. He's very good at fragging fights, especially early to mid game. The third weapon can be helpful, but overall isn't really needed. Best paired with a weapon that gives you a different range than what you have, your usual two weapons will most of the time give you a better outlook anyway, unless you pair it with your ultimate. Your ultimate will turn your third weapon gold and give you the best attachments. However, if you're caught in the fight without the ultimate, you better have attachments on your other weapons as you might be in a bit of trouble. The ultimate also gives you infinite ammo. Like I said before, it's good for when you haven't loaded enough, but late game when you have, it's unnecessary. Lastly, his tactical, which can be very helpful in a fight. Shoot it at the right person going into a fight and they might overheat, leading to an easy wipe. Next B tier legend is going to be Mirage. I'm very happy for a Mirage player base as he is not only just a fun character anymore, but a decent one too. His passive is a very good revive. Completely unseen, however still the audio can give away your position. The decoys had a massive buff as enemies are briefly scanned after shooting one. Pair it with a revive, you can fool enemies, revive your teammates and scan them within seconds. The decoy's UI is a small problem though, as most of the time with Mirage you can tell which one is the real one. The ultimate can be pretty good, but like I said the UI is easy to tell, so if you see the Mirage pop the ultimate you'll be able to tell which Mirage is which. However, played right, Mirage can fool anybody. The hard part is being perfect at it the whole time. Another B tier legend is somebody who has just been replaced by an item, it's Valkyrie. Valkyrie has been deemed useless, now her best ability is now an evac tower in game. Although her abilities are really good, there's no point in running her when you can just run evac towers and run a legend that Valk doesn't have similar abilities to, like Bloodhound or a Catalyst. I think if her abilities were all improved she would be back up to at least A tier, maybe even a buff to all three of the abilities. I think more fuel to her passive would be nice, maybe a less clunky shot in the missiles too as it is hard to shoot with all the cover around you, and with the ultimate I think it needs to be better than the evac tower, because right now it isn't. It's too slow to charge up and it goes the same height as an evac tower as well. A massive jump for Revenant, who for me is in the middle of B tier now. One ability I still have a problem with is his passive. It's alright, definitely suits him, but isn't the greatest still. It's improved but still lacks usability as not every fight has a massive wall to latch onto. His tactical though is good again. The last one was good, but having mobility really suits him and is very good. I think it's actually the exact same as an OCTANE pad, which is nuts to think about. Lastly, his best ability, the ultimate. You get a massive shield and it's so easily repairable too, you always have the upper hand. Definitely viable now and keen to see how he plays out. Now for the biggest shocker in my opinion, I'm going to put Wraith at B tier. Honestly for me she only has two abilities as her passive is basically useless. The only way you're going to get a function out of the passive is if a team is trying to sneak up on the Wraith. She has got a very good tactical though, being able to reset from any bad situation is very key in a fragger type role. Her ult is a weird one, because it can be pretty good, it's just there's not a whole lot of scenarios where it's better than other mobility abilities. However, I will say that using it to move down teammates or keep a good spot at reach is really good, and to never underestimate this. The last legend in B tier is slowly falling away from the meta but is still very good, it's going to be Watson. Her passive regen is really way too slow, and it's only useful for recharging when no teams are nearby or sometimes when you're holding a spot. However, her accelerant passive helps a lot. Mainly because her ultimate is so good. Instant pylons whilst holding a position will help you secure your spot. Her fences are pretty good, but very easily destroyable. There's scenarios where you can't break them, but most of the time they are only briefly holding off your enemies. And finally, her ultimate, which is very good. Stopping every projectile whilst producing very quick shield regens is a nutty ability, and definitely one of the best ultimates in the entirety of the game. The first legend in A tier is going to be Crypto. Now, a lot of people will be fuming at this, but hear me out. His scan is a lot more viable now because of the SEER nerf, although still easily destroyable. Despite that, it can provide you and your team with massive intel going into a fight. Speaking of intel, what his drone can do is nuts. You can actually grab banners, respawn teammates, scan beacons, and much more, all from up to 240 meters away. Lastly, his EMP is so underrated. You can do up to 50 damage per player, break majority of the abilities in the game, and stun enemies is actually massive. Definitely don't overlook Crypto. Sadly, his abilities rely on his drone only, so he'll never be one of the best legends in the game. Although he has great abilities, he still does need a rework. After having an actual nerf, SEER finally falls away from S tier. Still, he's a very good legend, just not as good as he once was. Beginning with his passive, you can see enemies' positions through walls. Slightly nerfed, but still viable, and is so much better than the other passives. His tactical did receive a massive hit, it's still good though, but I would argue Crypto Scan is now better. Now it can't stop healing and revives, SEER has become less scary. Lastly, his ultimate, which is still really good. Not as big as it once was, but still massive. Tracking your enemy's movement around you makes you get eliminations very easily, and it's hard to lose to the SEER by your side. Next is the legend who is extremely fun as we look at Pathfinder. He's not only fun, but he's incredibly viable too. His passive after the rework has been much better. Instant ultimates after scanning care packages is elite and not used enough by Pathfinders. His tactical is his best ability though, as you can get instant height and angles. Depending on how long the grapple is, the cooldown can be as little as 8 seconds. Lastly, his ultimate, which has improved so much. I don't know about you guys, but I struggle to even hit players as they go so fast on the zip. Going massive distances so fast does make him a great rotational pick. Newcastle is someone who has been so underpicked for a while now, it's not even funny. Newcastle is a very good legend, and it starts with his passive as you revive players with the shield active. Sometimes you can be caught out, but most of the time you can produce some clutch revives. Next is tactical, and it's definitely his best ability. Using it to push enemies whilst having sturdy cover is a very good tactic, and will make easy work of your enemies. And lastly, his ultimate, for me his worst ability, but still not even bad. It's great to launch on hurt squad mates and sometimes even push enemies with better angles or height. Someone who is very comparable to Newcastle is Gibraltar, who for me is just above his shielded friend. Starting with his passive, he gets an extra 50 shield when aiming down sights. I will die on the hill that this is broken and is overpowered, so if you play Gibraltar, please don't ever hit fire as you're missing out on so much shield. His dome is so good as well, as it can both provide great cover and speed up revives, a very sturdy ability. Lastly, his ultimate, which is like Newcastle as it's his worst ability, but it's still good. It does do massive damage, however roofs and cliffs do get in the way. Coming to the top of A tier, we have Bloodhound. They have been benefited so much from the SEER nerf, as in my opinion Bloodhound is now the best scan legend there is. Although their passive is not the greatest, it does give you at least some intel, as you can see the direction of nearest teams via the white raven you can see. Their tactical is where it gets good though, as their scan is now better than SEER's. Its wide range and ability to capture multiple enemies really does signify their dominance as the best scanner. Lastly, their ultimate, which is a lot of fun and is practical. Thermal vision is good, as you can separate enemies a lot more clearly, but the quicker scans is a major benefit, as you can provide your team with legal wall hacks very quickly. Onto the very last A tier legend, we have MAGGIE. She's a very good legend and is one of the most fun legends I've ever used. Her passive is the worst ability by far though, still has some uses though. The brief scan can help show the direction of the enemies and where they're heading, but that's about it, and the faster pace with the shotguns is a plus but doesn't really help a lot. Her tactical is a juicer though, as it can definitely deal some massive bits of damage and create havoc for the enemy team. A fragger's best friend, I would say. Lastly, her ultimate, which is very good. It has a massive effect on enemies as they are damaged, bounced and blinded at the same time. Just be careful as you're stunned and hurt if you hit yourself. Onto the final tier, the best of the best, we are going to kick off S tier with Horizon. She is such an awesome legend to play. Beginning with her passive, she can glide on surfaces instead of hitting them with a jolt. Also, the air control is real nice, and both help a lot with movement techs. Her tactical is her best ability, as you can both gain insane heights and block off entry points with the same ability. It's very clutch and can keep you alive for so long. Lastly, her ultimate, which is a pretty good ability. Use it to drag enemies away from cover or even break doors, which right now is a great counter to Catalyst. Next legend in S tier is going to be LOBA. She's a very good legend in this game and helps a lot with the current loot situation too. Her passive is better than what you might think, as you can see purple and better loot through walls. Utilize it by prioritizing loot in these areas and you start the game very strong. Her bracelet is a very good ability and is awesome for creating angles quickly. There's better movement abilities out there, but considering her ultimate, it's insane to have a good movement ability as well. Speaking of the ultimate, you can grab infinite ammo and 2 items of your choice every 2 minutes. Yep, that's a thing. You'll have the best loot in the lobby, making every fight yours to lose. The second best legend in the game for me is Catalyst. She is an insanely good legend and is very close to being the best for me. Firstly, she can recreate broken doors or reinforce them, making them insanely hard to destroy again. Holding down the spot is definitely her job and hers only. Next is her tactical, which in an open field isn't the greatest, but use it in a building or even behind cover, the enemies will have no choice but to either back off or get hit by the goo. Lastly, her ultimate, which is her best ability. You can't see past it, you can't see if you go through it, it's just so blinding. If you use it to rotate or push a team, you will be safe to do so, creating less panic and more calm in important situations. Now for the best legend in the game, it was close with a few people, but ultimately I have gone for Bangalore as the best legend in Apex. She brings so much value, which begins with her passive. She gets a burst of speed when shot near or at, which is so good for 1v1 scenarios as you can strafe so quickly. Her smoke is so good, but it was made to look so bad for so long due to bad players. Used right to block enemies' vision and not yours as well, you are safe to rotate and push into fights. It also helps a lot when you need a helping hand. Lastly, her ultimate, which is similar to Gibraltar's. It can be average if used to push teams and can be blocked by surroundings, but if you use it to rotate and push enemies into a better area, you have an easy dub. Well, that is my final tier list, and I'm pretty happy with where I put everyone. Just remember, it does matter a lot and how well you play them nowadays too. If you guys agreed or disagreed, make sure to let me know in the comments, as I'm open to discussions. Anyway, I hope you guys all enjoyed the video. After this, I'm hopefully monetized here on YouTube, so that would be an awesome feeling. So if you made it this far into the video, I really do appreciate you a lot. Have a good night, and I'll see you guys in the next one.